Alright, so hey guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all doing well. Today I just wanted to sit down and talk about the general hardware market, kind of fill in some info for those of you guys who may not have been keeping up these past couple of months with what's been going on. Maybe some of you have just kind of been looking into getting a new PC and you're like, wow, this is crazy expensive for the specs that I want on this machine. And again, a lot of you guys probably understand that market, but I do want to go into detail about all the things that are affecting the supply and demand and just the fundamental market things that are in place that are causing these things to be super scarce. And again, along with that, I also just want to sit down and talk about how you guys can kind of avoid some of these overspending practices that a lot of people are doing when it comes to buying, again, a new gaming PC, a new laptop, or one of the new consoles. Because again, all of this hardware that we're talking about here with all of these gaming platforms are all interlinked because it's fundamentally the same companies that are going to be developing all of the hardware for all of these products. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And if you guys do end up enjoying the video, make sure to leave a like on it. It really helps me out and helps this video get recommended to other people who might be interested in this sort of stuff. As well, if you guys do want to watch more content like this, or if you guys don't want to see more content like this, make sure to go in the comment section and just tell me what you like and don't like about this particular format of video. This is going to be something a little bit different than I usually do. It's just going to be kind of me chatting with you guys and not really having too much stuff on screen. So I just want to see how you guys end up enjoying this particular type of content. As well, if you guys want to see more, just hang out with the community and stuff like that, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. But yeah, let's get into the video. So first off, let's just talk about what's gone on. So back in October, we saw the release of the RTX 3000 series. So this is Nvidia's brand new architecture of GPUs. This is called the Ampere, is the code name for this particular architecture. And these things brought some massive performance improvements over Pascal, which has kind of been the thing that a lot of people have been holding on to, which was released back a while ago. That was the 10 series of graphics cards, and then we had the 20 series, which not a whole lot of people bought into. And now we've got the 30 series, which is absolutely insane when it comes to general performance, ray tracing performance, and DLSS, which are great features for anybody to be playing on and playing games with. And then in November, we saw AMD release their RDNA 2 cards, and these cards were way better than what we thought that they were going to be. AMD really hasn't competed with Nvidia, especially their new cards, in a long time, and they finally did it with RDNA 2 with AMD beating out Nvidia cards like the 3080 and the 3090 in some applications with their own cards, which has not really been seen a whole lot within these past couple of years, which is pretty exciting. And so AMD cards were also super in demand. These things also have ray tracing, a ton of video memory, and just things that might make them a little bit better than the Nvidia cards. And again, Nvidia is going to have some things that are better than AMD. It really just kind of comes down to who you are. Now again, these things launched in the midst of COVID-19 during the lockdown, right? This was going into winter, which people knew was going to be probably the hardest hitting time of the virus. And so people were, getting their stimulus checks and probably just getting ready to get a brand new gaming PC to kind of hunker down for the winter and just play some video games. And that was pretty much a perfect time to go out and buy a new GPU. But this just kind of created a perfect storm. See, GPUs themselves are fundamentally the lowest supply part in the entire PC ecosystem. And the main reason for that is they're just surprisingly low yield rates. If you guys take a look at a GPU die, which I should have on screen here, this thing is absolutely massive compared to a Intel CPU die. We'll kind of take a look at them side by side. These things are just absolutely massive. And what you guys have to understand about processor manufacturing of any kind, the larger and larger you create a die, the more and more susceptible it is to having defects. And again, what these defects are going to do is either completely eliminate the chip's ability to function correctly, or it is going to force the manufacturer to have to disable certain parts of the chip and make it a lower tier SKU. So by nature, GPUs are not easily able to be made like a CPU, which again is not easily made in the first place. So again, GPUs, you're not going to get nearly as much product to sell as you would from like a CPU from that same piece of silicon. And so with this massive amount of demand, even when there wasn't a whole lot of mining going on, again, crypto mining was something that was pretty important back then, and it really didn't ramp up yet, but people were kind of interested in the new Ampere stuff. And there really wasn't anything. It was mostly just gamer interest, and this kind of just lasted through October, November, and December, right? And those 3 months, October, November, and December, were probably the best 3 months to buy a graphics card if you could have. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, hindsight's 2020, right? I was kind of upset when I bought my card. I bought a 6800, not the XT version, it was just the 6800. It was the lowest in Navi 21 GPU I could get. Still an absolute beast. I love the thing. But I bought it for $680, which is $100 over the MSRP, which I thought was absolute robbery at the time. But then about a month later, I was like, holy crap, I just saved so much money on buying a new GPU, because the thing retails for about twice as much money now. So a lot of you guys are probably sitting there thinking, well, why isn't it a better time to buy then? I mean, of course, pricing was down, but the availability was much worse back then than it was now. And that is technically true. As time goes on, the supply is going to increase in the market, right? You're going to have more and more of these things making their way into buyers' hands, and so then less and less people are just going to be out in the market buying them. But I think what people didn't understand is the inability for people to buy after December. And what happened after December basically just destroyed the GPU market, and was that next factor that just kind of tilted it over to be pretty much the worst disaster that I've ever had when it comes to gaming on a desktop PC. So a little bit of history here again. Back early on in Trump's administration's kind of early years, right, they were not too happy with the aspect that China was making most of these semiconductors that were being used in the United States. They thought it risked national security, and they wanted to bring most of these companies to work in the United States. Now, again, there is some flawed logic with that particular thinking, because, again, most of the companies that make stuff in China are American companies. It's just that they have to use that labor in order to do that. And, again, Apple was excluded from this whole thing because, I don't know, it's just kind of a mess. Again, politicians, not a great mix when it comes to technology and overall business. I've never been a fan of that. But they basically kind of set in a thing in play where they wanted to set a tariff on exports from China that were specifically technology. And there was a bunch of exclusions to this, but one of the big things that they harped on for some odd reason was GPUs. And this basically mandated a 10 to 25% tariff on these cards, which again is just a 10 to 25% increase in the overall cost that the consumer has to pay, not the distributor, not the manufacturer. The consumer has to pay, which is a direct tax to the United States government. So this basically just increased the pricing of these particular parts by an insane amount. 25% on top of a $500 product already raises it up to $620, or $625. That is just absolutely insane, considering that most RTX 3070s were already AIB cards, which were not selling for the $500 MSRP. They were selling close to the $700 range. And then again, you're adding on that 25%, and that is just blowing this entire thing out of proportion. But again, most things don't get fixed like this, especially when it's the United States who is making the money from it. A lot of times they're just going to kind of look the other way and like, oh, well, you're getting screwed. Who cares? But again, that is just a huge reason why the prices have gone up. And then again, over time, people have just been kind of just picking these things up. And when scalpers noticed that, you know, people really want these GPUs, no matter really the price for it, because they have a stimulus check and they've got $1,000 to spend on a new GPU to put in their system, they're like, hey, why don't I buy all these up and sell them to people for the amount of money that they're willing to pay for it? And that became even more money than that was already put on from the tariff and the increased MSRP. And then we had another price increase from AIBs. They saw the scalpers and were like, holy crap, these guys are making so much money from just reselling our own product. I want a little bit of that. So what happened? Well, MSI, Asus, and all these other companies basically just kind of started increasing the margins of their pricing, which again, like if you compare an MSI card to a EVGA card, which again, there are some exclusions from EVGA, they don't have to pay the full tariff. But again, EVGA cards like the RTX 3080 is going for around $900, which is only $200 more than the MSRP, which is actually pretty good. But compared to MSI, where theirs is selling for $1,300, which is absolutely insane. Once people kind of notice that people are still willing to pay these absolutely astronomical prices for these GPUs, which should not be anywhere near these price points, the AIBs kind of looked at these things. Again, they were just reselling the same 3080 just with a different cooler on it. They were like, okay, why can't we make the money that all these other people are making just from reselling? And that's just kind of what ended up happening. So again, that's another price increase. And then you get another price increase just from AMD and Nvidia realizing that they are missing out on the money. And you can see this very, very evident with the new releases of their cards. You saw the TI lineup, the 3080 Ti, absolutely insane when it comes to its overall price. It is so bad that I would not recommend anybody to buy it. But Nvidia knows people are going to buy it because there's nothing left out there. It's $1,200. The RTX 3080 was $700. That's a $500 increase just to go up a little bit of performance. It's absolutely insane. And then as we saw with the AMD Radeon 6700 XT, this thing should have been priced at like $400 or below, but it was priced at $480. And again, all these companies just know that they can increase the overall price of their GPUs just because people are willing to pay that amount of money. So that is pretty much the main reason for the overall scarcity and the overall pricing of GPUs. It's just crazy high demand, a bunch of things going into play, and people just not being able to buy anything. Now let's kind of get to the little weird things and nuances. So I kind of mentioned this before, EVGA actually doesn't have a lot of these restrictions that other companies like MSI and Asus, who are China-based companies, have. So EVGA is not based in China, and so they are not necessarily subject to the same tariffs that these Chinese companies would be subject to. So again, if you're able to buy a GPU, I just go with an EVGA one because most likely you're going to be able to buy one for a somewhat decent price. But again, there are other ways to kind of get around this tariff. So if you look at things like laptops, which has been something that I've been recommending to a ton of people in my Discord and when we do live streams and stuff like that, laptops are some of the best ways to actually get some pretty decent hardware for pretty good money. And the main reason is because these laptops, even if they are manufactured in China, they're not really subject to the same tariff that GPUs are subject to. I'm sure that they do get a little bit of a tax on them for importing to the United States, but it's nowhere near 25%. It's probably not even 10% on top of it. And these things already have baked in GPUs, baked in CPUs. So right now you can buy a laptop for $1,200 and it's going to have pretty good specs in it, probably better specs than what most desktop systems are going to have in it if you're looking to build your own and looking to buy a GPU to plug into your system. The GPU that you might even put into your system, like a 3060, might cost as much as an entire laptop with a 3060 in it, which again is kind of the main reason that I've been recommending laptops. Now another thing that I've been recommending a lot is just not to build a gaming PC. I would never build a gaming PC within this particular climate. I know a lot of you guys who may be in the PC master race are super fanboys about building your own PC. Right now is probably the worst time to build a PC, and if you really want a gaming PC, you have to go the pre-built route. There's pretty much no other way to get around it, and there's a couple reasons for it. Pre-built companies for some reason are getting most of the allotment for GPUs. I'm not 100% sure why. I can draw some conclusions to it where AMD and Nvidia probably want to get the most new market share. They probably don't want people upgrading because it's better for their overall retention of a certain group of people. If people are buying their products new, they're kind of getting introduced to that particular company's ecosystem. So it makes sense for them to want to sell to like companies like Dell and CyberPower just so that they can introduce their products to a newer market who maybe never have had one of their products before. But again, that's just pretty much speculation right now. But from what I've seen, most of these companies are getting a bunch more GPUs than a lot of these retail stores are getting. And even then, they're not getting them at these insane prices. And if you look at companies like Dell and HP, I really don't think that they have to pay any sort of tax on their products because they pretty much develop most of their own parts, which arguably are probably some of the worst parts on the market. I think that Dell is by far the worst company to buy a gaming PC from, but that's my opinion. Some people may like it. They just have some really bad practices and terrible cooling on all their systems. But again, companies like HP and Dell who license other people to go and make their products probably don't have to pay the same tariffs that you would have to pay in order to ship a GPU over to the United States. And basically this just allows them to offer super low prices compared to their competition because they're selling systems with an i5 10400 with a GTX 1660 Super in it for like $900, though all of the parts and all the cooling are absolute garbage, but it's still $900 for a system like that, whereas you pretty much can't go to a company company like CyberPower or iBuyPower and get one for less than $1,200. So as of right now, pretty much what I recommend to do if you are buying a new gaming PC, if you're buying a new laptop, I would just go ahead and buy a pre-built one. I usually recommend Best Buy or Micro Center. I would rather go in store than buy offline. If that's not an option to you, then again, you can buy offline. It's not a big problem. It's just that shipping times are going to take forever to fulfill your order. And just again, when it comes down to buying in store, you're basically able just to go back to that store if anything's wrong with the computer instead of having to ship it back to the actual manufacturer. And then again, before I forget, let's talk about consoles here for a quick second. So consoles, for those of you guys who don't know, consoles are pretty much tied into the entire CPU and GPU market, and that's because AMD, who makes both CPUs and GPUs, created both of those particular chips for both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and the Series S. And basically what it comes down to is AMD's priority and the amount of silicon wafers that they have. So AMD makes a bunch of different things. So they make really good server CPUs, which they make a bunch of money off of. They make a bunch of desktop CPUs, which are really good, and they make a lot of money off of. They make GPUs, which again, they make really good margins on them, but I don't think it's anywhere near what they make on their CPUs, and then they make a bunch of money again off of their laptop CPUs as well. And they're getting into a bunch of different things right now. But when it comes to the consoles, there's not a whole lot of profit there because it's a contract, and they really can't raise or lower the pricing of a lot of those chips just because it's a predetermined contract between them, Microsoft, or Sony, depending on what system it is. And again, they're not getting crazy profit margins because when it comes down to it, most of these consoles have to be built within that particular $500 range. And the hardware that they're putting into these chips, it's nothing to laugh at. Like these are super beefy systems when it comes down to it. And I really don't think AMD thinks it's extremely profitable to keep on printing out more CPUs than they have to, because again, they do have a contract with these companies, and so it probably doesn't make sense for them to print out more of these APUs that are going into these consoles than they have to, because when it comes down to it, their server chips are super profitable for them, their CPUs for their desktop systems are super profitable for them, and even just compared to that, their GPUs, they can charge so much money for their GPUs. They're just making so much money from all those other sources of revenue that it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to keep on putting it into PS5s and Xbox Series X's and S's. And probably when the demand for all those other parts goes down, then you're probably going to see them ramp up production for those Xbox Series S and S, and then those PS5s as well, just because that's a guaranteed amount of money that they're going to get. So again, sorry for those of you guys who want to buy a console. I really don't think it's going to get better until everything else gets better. All these things are pretty much all in one. AMD has a certain amount of silicon that they can use at a certain point in time, and they basically have to pick between which things they want to make at a certain point in time. So again, I think consoles are probably going to get pushed to the wayside just because the profit margins on those are probably not even close to what they get on some of their other products that they put out there on the market. So here's the big question that a lot of people have been asking. When will things go back to normal, right? When will supply and demand kind of meet, and when will we see pricing start to get back to normal and people able to actually go out and buy a GPU that they want? And from what I've heard from a bunch of different YouTube videos, a bunch of different sources, and a bunch of different people that I've talked to, that it's going to be around next year. So early next year is what a lot of people have been telling me, and I can believe that. I think early next year is probably going to be around the time where people are pretty much done with COVID. People have probably bought the hardware that they want to buy if they've been looking to buy one. And if people are still looking for items, there's going to be new generations of stuff coming out as well. TSMC has been ramping up production. For those of you guys who don't know, those are people who AMD contracts to make their chips. So TSMC has been ramping up in order to make more and more CPUs and stuff like that, and more graphics cards. So it probably makes sense for Q1 of next year to be the expected time for everything to get back to relatively normal. But again, that doesn't mean that pricing is going to go back to normal, because again, there's still going to be that tariff that is going to be in place. So GPUs are still going to be fairly expensive compared to what they really should be costing. Alright, so that's really about all I have to say for this video. Again, if you guys did enjoy this sort of content, I know it's a bit longer, I know it's not necessarily something that I do regularly, it's not my normal sort of content, but if you guys did end up enjoying it, please leave a like. Again, comment down below what you liked, what you didn't like. It really helps me out. I really want your guys' feedback on this particular type of content, and hopefully I can see you guys in the next one. Peace.